Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in June. I read a total of 9 books, which was kind of shocking. I couldn't believe how much I was reading. June was kind of a busy month, as the summer always is, but anyway, I was very pleased with that number. I really enjoyed pretty much all of the books that I read in June, so that's a win. Only one of them that I was minorly disappointed in with the ending, which we'll talk about, but overall it was a great reading month. I loved it. I'm pretty sure all of these books were rated 4 stars or higher, so there we go. I was really excited, but let's just go ahead and get started talking about all of them. So grab your coffee or whatever your drink of choice is and come along with me as we chat about books. Only 5 physical books, the rest were read on my Kindle. The first one that I read was actually this one, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie, what is his actual name? Charlie Mackesy? I don't know how to say his last name, so that's my bad. I'm sure everyone has heard of this book. I don't know. If you haven't, you should read it. I don't know if it's even considered a children's book or even a children's picture books, because the writing, for one, would be a little hard for a child to read because it's written as if he wrote it with like a pen. But I don't know, the themes are just really deep and really sweet as well, and I enjoyed it. It's been sitting on my shelf for so long, and it literally took me 20 minutes to read it, obviously because it's not a chapter book. But the illustrations, absolutely love them, and just the little quotes here and there are so sweet. I love them. I just think it's really beautiful, so highly recommend if you haven't picked this one up yet. Okay, so then the next one that I picked up was Band of Sisters by Cathy Gohlke. So this is the second book that I've read by Cathy, and I loved it. I loved the first one that I read of hers, and I just wanted to go through, if you follow me on Goodreads, you probably would have seen it, but I went through and marked all of her books as one to read because she is now an author that I want to go read her entire backlist. Like, I don't know, her writing is just, it's so beautiful, and her books, they're so deep, but they also address hard things. But their characters, like, I would say her books are really character driven, which I absolutely love because I love to see character development. I love to see people grow and change, and the faith elements as well in her books are just so rich. I don't know that I can say she's becoming my favorite author, but she's becoming one of my favorites at least, because her books are just so good. At least the ones that I've read so far. This is only my second one, but I'm already hooked and I just want to read all of them. We follow Maureen O'Reilly and her sister. They have to flee Ireland because both of their parents have died, and because of a certain situation there of Maureen's previous employment, it's really dangerous. She wants to protect her sister from it, so she is wanting to leave Ireland and go to America to find a better life. So they do make it out of Ireland to Ellis Island, where most of the immigrants at that time would have been processed through to be allowed to enter into America. And once she gets there, she realizes that the benefactor who she was hoping would pay their way to get into America, because there were a lot of rules back then as far as coming in. Like, you had to have a certain amount of money so that you wouldn't be just out on the streets and become a ward of the state or government. Also had to be in good health, just various things like that. And it was also very difficult for single women to get into the country without a benefactor at that time. There's like a whole backstory. I hope I'm explaining this well. There is a letter from a man he had written to her father many years ago, after one of the wars, basically saying that he owed his life to her father, and that if he ever needed to come back to America and bring his family, he would pay the way, things like that. But the letter is over 20 years old, and so she has no idea if it's still valid or anything, but it's like her only hope. So that's why she's going. But then she learns that he has passed away, and his daughters, not really his daughters, more his son-in-law, kicks her out, and she's forced to find employment elsewhere, find a place to live, find ways to protect her younger sister. And basically she ends up working at a really big department store, a clothing store, but she quickly discovers that there's something suspicious going on behind the scenes with the girls that are working at the store, and with the men who come into the store. It kind of gives it on the back of the book as well, so it's not a spoiler. And one of the main points that the story is centered around is trafficking of young women, which is really heavy, and so that could be a trigger warning. There's also obvious mentions of abuse and rape and things like that. But yeah, this was a very real problem during that time. Vulnerable girls coming into the country just trying to find a better life, and because they're alone, they get sucked into this life by evil men manipulating them. So, long story short, this is all in the back as well. The daughter of the man who was supposed to be Maureen's benefactor, she is very much a woman who is passionate about all the different causes and helping the least of these, basically. And after hearing her brother-in-law had turned Maureen away, she becomes like, she definitely just feels it in her heart that God is leading her to find Maureen, to help her out. And so she gets involved with trying to find her. There is a man who comes along who seems to be a business associate of her brother-in-law, but he is also determined to find Maureen. There's a lot to unpack in this book, honestly, but it was just so good. I love the faith elements and just watching Maureen grow, because she was completely broken because of the life she was forced to live in Ireland and the things that evil men did to her, and like just wanting to protect her sister from that life. Yeah, just everything, because she's so, like, once she's starting to work in the store and she's starting to be suspicious because there are girls disappearing, she's like wanting to help them as well. So yeah, a lot to unpack in this book, but it's so beautiful. I loved it. It's definitely some hard themes in here, but I do love the themes of justice and redemption in this book, but I highly recommend. Okay, so then the next one that I picked up was The Giver by Lois Lowry. I didn't have a TBR for June. I was just looking through my TBR cart, and I'm trying to get the numbers down of my physical TBR that I have, and this is just one that I've been wanting to read for a while, and I feel like most everyone knows what this book is for the most part. I would think, because it's kind of a classic, a modern classic, I don't know, but it is a dystopian story, futuristic story where the world is now, for the most part, at least where these people live, is very controlled. It's a controlled environment. You can't see colors, you can't hear things. Everything's controlled. Emotions, what you're eating every day, the jobs you're getting, all of the things. Yeah, it's just really controlled so that everyone has the same kind of life, the same everything, which sounds ideal and what people would want, but there's so many things missing as well. And that's kind of what you follow through the story. Jonas is chosen to be the receiver of memories, and so basically only one person, the giver, and then Jonas, because he's receiving the memories, remembers what the world used to be like. All the different animals, all the different emotions, music, the colors, the different landscapes, all over the world, everything. He is the only one that remembers these things. But along the way, he's obviously, along with the memory and all of the different emotions that he's feeling, there is also pain, because in this controlled world, they don't really have pain. There's a little bit of pain, but it's not as heavy as the pain of memories would be, like war and death and everything like that. That's pretty much the main gist of the story, is him like receiving these memories, realizing what is wrong in their seemingly perfect world, and wrestling with that, the pain and all of the different emotions that he's now experiencing, and also starting to see seeing the flaws in their world and seeing the beauty that emotions and even pain brings to their life. Just like the richness of all of the different emotions. So I was really enjoying this book all the way up until the very end. And I'm like, what was that ending? If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. To me, it felt like she got tired of writing the book and just ended it. And I'm like, what even happened to some of these characters? Like, what's even gonna happen to Jonas? And I don't want to give spoilers for things because there's obviously something that happened that's very significant towards the end, but I'm just like, what happened? This book was going to be 5 stars, and then that happened, and I'm just like, I don't understand. If you've read the book and the rest of the series, do I need to keep reading the series to find out what happened or what's going on? I don't know. But like, I was reading the bonus material at the end of the book. There was like a Q&A with the author, and to me it almost seemed like she doesn't actually really finish the story, and maybe that's the whole point. We're supposed to come up with our own ending. I don't know. I don't like books like that, because I just want to know. I just want to know what happened. I just want to know if he's okay. I don't know. So kind of mixed feelings. This is the book that I was disappointed in, because I'm like, what happened? What are we supposed to do with that ending? I don't know. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. It's very interesting, but yeah, that ending just kind of threw me off, and I was like, what? No, I need more. That was not okay. I ended up giving it 4 stars, so it still wasn't a low rating. It's just, I was just disappointed in the end, but I would still recommend it. But just be prepared for a disappointing ending. Then the next one that I finished was An Uncommon Courtship by Kristi and Hunter. So this is book number 3 in the Hawthorne House series, and this one is my favorite. I rated it 4.5 stars. We're following one of the brothers now. So the first 2 books follow the sisters' lives, Miranda and I can't remember the other sister's name. That's my bad. Anyway, but we follow Trent. He's the younger brother of the family. It is a marriage of convenience / forced marriage. I love that trope for some reason, but yeah, the way Kristi wrote this book though, and wrote that trope, was a little different, and I actually really loved it, how she handled the relationship. Trent is the younger brother, so he's not the Duke, which he's very grateful for, because he does not feel like he could fulfill that role, and he's kind of just was always just the, I mean, you know, the typical bachelor. Like, he loved his single life, although he hoped to get married someday and fall in love. But then this forced marriage happened, and so he had to kind of just rethink everything, because he was expecting to fall in love first and then get married, but then he's now married to someone he doesn't even hardly know. And what is he supposed to do with that? But basically, Trent and the girl, Adelaide, got stuck together in a cellar or a cave or something. Somehow they got stuck in there, and it was overnight, and he thought that the honorable thing to do, even though nothing happened between them, was to just marry her to save her reputation. Yeah, it goes from there. Adelaide is the younger sister of her family, and she's also kind of just forgotten and cast aside, because her mom is not a nice lady at all. And she's just obsessed with helping. The mom is obsessed with getting her older daughter into high society, marrying the right person, and having all of the right connections, and just kind of like, Adelaide was just kind of pushed to the side and never really had a season, like most young women would have back in this time, of being presented to the queen, going to all the balls. And so Adelaide is used to just kind of be in the background, but now she's all of a sudden married into a duke's family, except Trent's not the duke, but you know, the connection is there, and she's just like, whoa, what am I supposed to do with this? More to the story. This part of the story was a little frustrating, but we understand why Trent did it, and I still think that the author handled it fairly well. But Trent thinks the honorable thing to do is to not live in the house after he's married, and he moves into his brother's house so that he can properly court Adelaide. And like in his mind, he's doing the honorable romantic thing, and like it is really sweet concepts to like give her that courtship and give her the experience of a season in London. It's just a lot of, you know, miscommunication happening, but handled well, because I don't like miscommunication just for the sake of miscommunication. He doesn't communicate his plan very well to Adelaide, and so she's just confused and thinking like she's just going to be stuck in this married life as just being home alone all the time, and her husband is still out doing his thing, just living his life like normal, doing all the things that he would have done as a bachelor. But anyway, I just loved their story. I love seeing Adelaide grow and blossom from being out of the influence of her mom, and or out of under the shadow of her mom and sister. And I really do like Trent. He, like, for all of his blunderings and everything in this attempted courtship of his wife, I just thought he was a really genuine, sweet guy, and I loved watching their story develop. But I will say, I don't know that I would recommend this for younger readers, younger teenagers, I would say, because when they do finally come together for their wedding night, because they were obviously not physically intimate in the first couple weeks because they didn't know each other, and he was just obviously wanting to do the honorable thing. But I think the way Kristi handled that situation was so different than most other authors write. The initial coming together as husband and wife in a marriage of convenience story, it was very real and not like just this perfect thing that happened and it finally happened, whatever, and everything was perfect. No, it was very real. It was very realistic. Realistic is the word that I'm looking for. It wasn't just this perfect, woohoo, we're finally husband and wife and everything was perfect and all the things, the way it happened was great. No, it was very real, realistic. And there were some things that he had to work through in talking to other men. And so for that reason, that's why I would not really recommend it for the younger readers. It's not descriptive or anything. There's no like open door or whatever, like all of that stuff. It's a very clean book, but just Trent processing some emotions and like talking about what happened, mostly because back in this time, no one was really informed about the marriage bed. And so they kind of just had to figure things out on their own. And so Trent needed to go ask his friends who were married about some of these things just to get some advice. And so those conversations and just everything about that is why I would not recommend it to the younger readers as much. But it's still very clean. And I like the way that Kristi handled it. I think it was very well done. But yes, this one is my favorite of the series. As I've already said, I would recommend it. I'd recommend the whole series, honestly, right now. So anyway, that is An Uncommon Courtship by Kristi Hunter. Okay, so then the next one that I picked up after An Uncommon Courtship was The Inheritance Games. I don't have the physical book. I borrowed it from the library. I had put it on hold several weeks ago, actually, and it had all of a sudden become available, so I was like, okay, I'll just go ahead and read this. I'm not sure if it'll be my thing. I don't know if I'll like it, because I don't just love contemporary. I don't love YA, especially secular contemporary YA. So I went in a little skeptical, like, I don't know if I like this. Let's just see how it goes. But I ended up loving it, actually. It was so fun. That's just the main thing. It was just fun. If you haven't read this book and you haven't heard about it, because it is fairly popular, we follow a girl, Avery, who is randomly contacted by lawyers of a very, very wealthy man, multi-billionaire, saying that she is to be present at the will reading because her name is listed on the will. In a matter of 2 days, her life is completely changed, and she's taken to Texas to this family home, to the estate, to the mansion, everything, and is named as main person who inherits everything from this man. And the thing is, he has 4 grandsons, who everyone thought, at least the oldest one, would be the inheritor of everything. The man who passed away, I can't really think of his name. He is a Hawthorne. I thought it was really funny because, like, these people were Hawthorns, but not even related to the inheritance games, because but they were Hawthorns as well. Anyway, the old man Hawthorne who passed away and left all his money to Avery, he loved games and puzzles, and so all of the growing up years for the 4 grandsons, they were constantly trying to solve all of his puzzles that he would make. And so there was a whole thing set up for Avery and the 4 grandsons to solve the mystery, solve the puzzles, as to why he chose Avery to be his, what is the word that I'm looking for? Heir apparent, I think is the right word. Anyway, so they were all trying to figure out why she was chosen, because she had no connection to the family whatsoever. It was just a lot of fun. I loved the idea of, I mean, who doesn't want to be randomly chosen to inherit billions of dollars? I think it would be pretty great, honestly. Money is not everything. I know that, but I just think it would just be interesting, like, to think about all of the things you could do with that amount of money, all of the good things. I know a lot of bad things could happen as well, and you could be very selfish with it. But all that to say, just this mansion with all of the secret tunnels and secret rooms and passages and all of the games and the puzzles were so interesting. I had fun with that part. I wasn't as connected to the characters as much. Like, I liked Avery, and I was right there with her trying to figure out why she was chosen to be the oh, there's baby girl, hold on. Yeah, I was mostly just interested in the games and the puzzles and the mystery that surrounded this book. The characters, like I was saying, I was really invested in Avery's story as to why she was chosen, but at the same time, I just didn't really connect with the characters as much. I wasn't really rooting for any of the brothers, because they all have major issues. And when it's a secular book, I don't know how else to say it, but like, everyone's problems are just there. And they don't have a moral code, I guess I could say. There is some. The way I'm saying it makes it sound a lot worse than it actually is, you know, but all of the brothers, for the most part, have some kind of issue. And so I wasn't really rooting for any of them. There was also a little hint of a love triangle, which I do not like, of Avery, like, trying to figure out which of the 2 brothers that she actually liked. I don't love that. And so I don't really know how the rest of the series goes, if that becomes more of a thing, or if it's just more of the games and things. I don't know. I did at the time rate it 4 stars just because I really had fun with it. Yeah, just because I had a lot of fun with it. But there's a little bit of content that I didn't love. One of the main things being that there is some use of language, but it's not the actual word. There were substitute words being used, but you definitely, only because this character wasn't allowed to swear or use any language like that, and so she would just use substitutes that were very close to the original words, and so it just got annoying and just felt overdone and unnecessary. Overall, I did just enjoy it, but again, mostly just for the games and the mystery. I think I will continue the series. I don't know if the rest of the series is clean like this first one, besides the language part, but there was something that happened at the end of the book that just made me really curious to just kind of keep on. I don't know, are the rest of the series worth reading, those of you who have read them, or should I just go look up spoilers and figure out what happened? I don't know. I don't know what I'll do, but I did enjoy it. 4 stars. There we go. The next one that I picked up then was the Warsaw Sisters by Amanda Barratt. This one was recommended here on BookTube. I can't remember. I've seen it on different channels being recommended. And this was also another one that I borrowed from my library that I had placed on hold, and it finally became available after weeks of waiting. And so I picked it up. And wow. I have a theme going on apparently this year of reading books set in Poland during World War II. Hi. Are you just listening to Mom talk about her books? You're just watching Mom? You silly girl. Yeah, so this one we follow two twin sisters who are living in Warsaw when Germany invades Poland, beginning World War II. And just their experience throughout it all. So you're getting both of their points of views. It switches between the sisters. And just their different perspectives and their different experiences in it, because they do eventually become separated in a way, or they don't live together anymore throughout the war. Their dad had joined the Polish army and left, and their mom had passed away when they were younger. So it was basically just them two, and that was it. That's all they had, was each other. But yeah, wow, this book. I really loved it. As far as the writing is so beautiful. I literally highlighted the opening 2 paragraphs, I think it was. It was just so beautiful, and it just drew me in right away. And I felt that way throughout the whole book. Like, there were so many lines that I highlighted, and I was just drawn into the writing. It was very like poetic, I guess. I don't know. It was just beautiful. I loved the writing. The writing itself would just get 5 stars, but I only gave it 4 stars. This was published by Revell. I don't know how you say the publisher company. I think this is a Christian publisher. It's one of those things that I wrestle with Christian publishers to publish books like these, because I don't know that this is necessarily Christian historical fiction, because yeah, there is some faith elements in here that I actually kind of appreciated, but with it being set in Poland, it was mostly just Catholic teachings and mindsets. And for the most part, I don't have that many issues with the Catholic Church. I do genuinely believe that there are genuine believers within the Catholic Church. But at the same time, these 2 girls specifically, while they were raised in the Catholic Church and probably would have considered themselves Christians, there was no evidence of an actual relationship with Jesus and the Father. Like, it just wasn't there, which is really sad, because it's one of those things that, how did people even survive those awful times without having that relationship with the Father? And it's just like they're struggling all on their own, while there are a few moments of comfort or platitudes from their priest that they go see. If that makes sense. Like, I was just really, it just made me sad, because I'm like, there could have been so much more for these girls. But it is a reality though, because in Poland, I don't know the exact percentages, but it's pretty high, like the upper 90s percentage of the people are Catholic. And so it's just very, oh, sorry, sweetheart. Mom got your head. It's very real to the time and the place. But that was just one element. Like, the faith aspect of this book was lacking, in my opinion. Just because of that, there didn't seem to be a real relationship. There at the end, one of them did seem to have a little bit more of a faith experience, but again, it wasn't showing them actually believing on Jesus Christ. It was just a thing more that they were Christians just because they were part of the Catholic Church. If that makes sense. I hope I'm saying this right. Another thing about, as far as content, one of the sisters had a moment of weakness, and she and the man that she was in love with slept together, and there, as a result, there was a child then, and they weren't married, and so there was that aspect as well. It was portrayed as wrong, which I was grateful for. But yeah, again, I enjoyed the story. It was beautiful, like I said, the writing. There was just those elements that I was disappointed in as far as the faith elements of the story. And yeah, and there's obviously some really sickening, hard things that these girls experienced and faced. And obviously the people of Warsaw, they went through so much. And so it was a very heavy, dark, and somewhat depressing book. And yeah, there was a little bit of a hopeful ending, which was great. And just having visited Poland and touring Warsaw and seeing some of these places that were described in the story, like I got to stand where the original wall of the ghetto was. I got to see the memorials and visit what they call Old Town, that was pretty much destroyed but then rebuilt. And so like reading that story of seeing how the people of Warsaw rose up above the hardships that they faced to like rebuild their city and reclaim their lives, that aspect of the story was absolutely beautiful. And having visited there and seen these places and also talked to people in Poland and hearing the stories of this, like knowing it was real, hearing the stories from the people, it was beautiful. I love that part of the story as well. But yes, I laughed with them, I cried with them, the characters and just the things that people faced there. It was awful. Anyway, yes, I would recommend this book in the sense that it is very real and I would say really accurate to what happened in Warsaw. So like the historical aspect of it all, I would recommend it because I feel like these are stories that people need to know, or else they'll be buried and it could happen again. But again, it's very heavy, it's very dark sense of everything that happened to the people of Warsaw. All that to say, just go in knowing that it's not just a happy book. So there we go. So then the next book that I finished was She Is Yours by Jonathan and Winter Pitts. This is a Christian nonfiction book. Yeah, the subtitle is Trusting God as You Raise the Girl He Gave You. I picked this book up on the recommendation of Felicia Masonheimer. I think a lot of people would know who she is. She wrote the book Every Woman a Theologian. She's written many books, actually. This was one of the books that she had recommended when someone was asking her about parenting books that she would recommend. And because I have a daughter, I picked this one up. Mostly because, a moment of honesty, I never really saw myself having daughters because I was raised with 5 brothers for 14 years until my little sister eventually came along at the tail end. But yeah, all my life I just felt like I could relate to guys a little more or understand them a little more because I grew up with 5 brothers. I did everything with them and my dad and all of the things, and I guess you could say I was kind of a tomboy growing up. For the most part, I just felt comfortable around guys. I always thought they were just a lot more easy to understand compared to girls with all of their emotions. And I'm a girl and I have emotions, I know that. But yeah, just because of my experience growing up, I just always wanted to be a boy mom, in the sense that in my mind I'm like, boys would be easier to raise, or I wouldn't know how to raise a daughter because I always felt like I struggled connecting with girls, connecting with emotions, all of that. But I am so grateful that God gave me a daughter because it has taught me so much, and God knows best. He knows what I needed. He knew all along that my first child would be a daughter, and I know that He will equip me to raise her. But it's taught me to just rely on Him more, to trust Him, and to, like, I don't know, reevaluate some of my thinking and my views of little girls and their emotions and what I would have considered drama. Yeah. So I picked up this book wanting to, you know, equip myself a little more with just raising daughters and just wanting to grow in that aspect. And yeah, and it's taught me to like realize that there are some things that I also need to work on in my life, as far as like if I want to teach my daughter these things, I have to first learn it and make it a part of my life and part of my character and all of that, if that makes sense. But yeah, I did enjoy this book. I'm a very practical person, so I prefer practical advice, and there was some practicality in here, but not as much as I wanted, because like they would give these concepts of like really good biblical concepts of teaching your daughter some of these things, but I'm like, I need more like practical tips, like how to actually teach them this, you know, not just tell me to teach them this. I need to know how to teach them those things. But that was probably more just a personal thing, because I would still recommend this book to other people. I think it was very well written, had a lot of good biblical advice in here. I did highlight some things there. I tabbed a few things, if you can see that. And then the final book that I read, not the final book, I still have 2 more. So in June I started watching the 11th season. I'm catching up on When Calls the Heart series on Hallmark, and let's just say, you know, the show itself is interesting, and it's clean, it's wholesome, it's very Hallmarky. I think everyone knows what that means. So as I was watching it, I was just like, ugh, I want to go back and read the real story. Okay, so I picked up When Calls the Heart by Janette Oak. This is probably my 3rd or 4th time reading it. Wow, I love it so much. 5 stars, even the 4th time around. I just love the story. It's so real, and I just wish that the show itself would actually have followed the original story instead of making up its own thing and characters and everything. I'm just like, if people only know When Calls the Heart, the show, it's so sad, because you're missing out on a very rich, beautiful, sweet, simple story that Janette Oak wrote. Oh goodness. I'm very passionate about this. I don't know why. Like, Janette Oak is one of those that, like, she's, to me, in my mind, she's one of the OG Christian fiction authors, because she was one of the first ones that I ever read. And for the most part, I would recommend her books to young readers, because like I said, they're clean and they have really good faith content, I think. One of my other favorite books by her is also my little sister, who's 12 years old, is one of her favorite books too. And it's just, I don't know, I just think her books are wholesome and sweet. Maybe a little archaic, or, you know, predictable, and can be cheesy, I guess. But I don't know. I think it's more nostalgia attached to them as well for me, because I just loved them. Specifically the Canadian West series and When Calls the Heart and the following books. Because Elizabeth and Wynne, it's not Jack, it's Wynne Delaney, okay? It's not Jack Thornton. It's Wynne Delaney. I obviously have very strong opinions about this. Don't get me wrong, I love Jack on the When Calls the Heart series, but he doesn't even remotely compare to Wynne Delaney. I will say there is a single movie that came before the show did, and it was loosely based off of the first book, because that Elizabeth was reading her great aunt's journals and her great aunt's journals were from the actual book. And so a lot of those happenings that were happening in the journal are exactly how it happened in the book, which I really loved. So I liked that movie in that sense, because it did kind of bring to life the actual book. But again, I just wish they would have made a series out of the actual Canadian West series, because I love the story so much. It's just so wholesome. But if you have no idea what this book is even about, I just keep rambling about how much I love it. I'm not even telling you what the book is actually about. But basically, Elizabeth, she is a school teacher and her brother lives out west. She lives more in the east, but her brother asks her if she would be willing to come out because they need school teachers out there. Obviously the west is just being settled and they're needing school teachers, and so she agrees to go. And she's very much a sheltered, in a certain sense, girl. She comes from a pretty wealthy family, so she's used to the finer things in life, and so she is moving out west, where it's very rugged, primitive living for the most part in certain areas still, and so it's just all an adventure for her. As a single woman, she loves being single, she loves being a school teacher, she doesn't really feel the desire at this point to be married, and she's actually kind of like opposed to it. But along comes Win and changes that for her. We love to see it. Win is also, though, he is a Mountie. He is also very determined to remain single because in his mind, with his job, he's very devoted to his job and he really believes in it and what he's called to do. And he believes, like, with his job, it is pretty much forced that his priorities have to be God first, and then the job, and then his wife. And he, like, just because of the demands of the job, that's kind of the reality of the situation. And so he's just basically determined that he's not going to put a woman in that place because he doesn't think it's fair to her, which I think is honorable and noble. But at the same time, I'm kind of like Elizabeth. It's like, but hello, you're not letting the woman who loves you even the chance of trying, because it, like, you know, if she loves you, she'd be willing to live this life with you. Like, it's like she's aware of the facts and she would choose to do so because she loves you, so let her do that. You're like robbing her of that choice. But anyway, the story unfolds. I would recommend this book and the series. I love it. I'm going to keep reading the series as well. It's just been so fun to return to this world. Just all of the different escapades that Elizabeth gets in, living in the West in a remote little town where there was no school before, so she's literally the first teacher and she's starting out with all of the children. Anyway, highly recommend One Calls the Heart, the original series, the book, the good story, the best story. Anyway, alright, so the final book then that I read was Wormwood Abbey by Christina Baehr. This one was also just a random pickup. I think I saw Lindsay from the blog Books for Christian Girls. I don't know how you always say that, Lindsay, so quickly, because to me it's kind of a tongue twister. Anyway, Lindsay shared that this book was free on Kindle a couple weeks ago, and I purchased it just because, you know, it was free, and I saw her recommend it, I saw Chantel recommend it, and so I was like, you know what, I'll try it. But it's been sitting in my Kindle library for a while, and for Chantel's Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for June, the prompt on the Doyle side, which I'm following, is to read either a sci-fi or a fantasy book. I was like, man, I don't have any fantasy books on my physical TBR. I don't know which one I could use for this prompt. The Giver technically could maybe be considered fantasy, but I wasn't sure. It's more dystopian. And so for me personally, I didn't really feel like it fit into the category fantasy. But then this one came up, or I found it, saw it again in my Kindle library, and I was like, you know what, why not just read it? I don't know what it's about at all. Like, I didn't really remember what the story was about or what the details were. I just knew that it was recommended. And yeah, so I just picked it up and started reading it without knowing much about it at all, and I absolutely loved it. Was this my only 5 stars of the month? Like, I actually rated it 5 stars. It was so fun. It was so good. And it would be considered more of a cozy fantasy. There's no magic. There are dragons. There was one line in the story, like I think in the first chapter, that was like, oh my goodness, I'm hooked. I have to figure out what's happening at this place. So ultimately, Edith and her family inherit Wormwood Abbey. From her father's side, it would have been his father's family's home growing up, and due to random circumstances, her father's family kind of disowned him and so they didn't live there anymore. He was actually a clergy in another parish, and so when they inherit this place, they move there temporarily to just like handle all of the affairs of the estate and everything. And while there, Edith discovers this little creature who she then names Francis, who then she also discovers is actually a dragon. And with that come all of the other secrets of the Abbey that she uncovers. And it was really fun. It was really cozy. It was really sweet. I love the characters. I love the relationships between the friends and the relationship of her and her parents and her brother. And they're actually cousins because there were other 3 girls living there already. And so they were like, her family was not wanting to take away the home from these girls. And so they were trying to figure out a way to help them. Because one of the lines, it was really funny because I loved all of the references to various classics, but her father, Edith's father, was like, I don't want to be a Mr. Collins from Pride and Prejudice, you know, of basically kicking out the family because he inherited it, and he was like, he doesn't want to do that. But I don't know, there were a lot of references to other classics, and I absolutely love that. I don't even know if this is really marketed as a Christian fantasy, but there are Christian elements in it, which I really loved and appreciated. But yeah, this was the 5-star book of the month, and which is very surprising to me because it's fantasy, but I loved this style of fantasy. So if there are other books like this, let me know so I can read them. I do plan to keep reading the series though because it was just so fun. I loved it. Highly recommend. But anyway, those were the books that I read in June. Again, a great reading month. I really enjoyed all of these books that I read. And yeah, anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts were on them, or if there were any of these books that stood out to you that you want to read. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be hopefully soon. I've been busy, folks, trying to come up with video ideas as well. So if there's anything in particular that you want to see, comment that down below as well. Anyway, I'll stop chatting. This video is probably very long. Goodbye.